What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Tuesday edition of Back Your Play BYP. Rich Quinones here, Q, alongside my guy, Jovan Alford, at Jovan 10, content producer at The Sporting News, and always kind enough to give us a couple moments, little Philadelphia perspective, and we'll get into the games on the field, so to speak. But, Jovan, I've kind of been asking a lot of my guests today, and I will the rest of the week, just watching what transpired last night, Buffalo and Cincinnati. As a sports fan, as a guy that's covered the NFL and sports, what was your reaction to what transpired with the Bills safety, Damar Hamlin?
First reaction, just devastating. Full disclosure, I was watching the Sixers game at the time of Monday Night Football, and then I started seeing text messages, saying like, "Oh my God," like just shocking. I'm like, "What's going on?" So then I checked Twitter and I started seeing like people saying like pray for Damar Hamlin and oh my God, like they got to do something. Then I see the hit and replay. I'm just like, this is just unreal, right? Your immediate thoughts is not worrying about the actual game, right? At that point, it's more so you're worried about the guy on the field, the player under the helmet. And it's a scary situation because you're focusing now on, is this guy going to make it? Like you're focusing on, can they help him out like ASAP? Because this wasn't no regular, like how we see. I mean, we just saw it a couple of days on Sunday, right? Josh Sweat, gets carted off the field on a stretcher. It's not one of those type of situations. This is a player getting CPR on the field, teammates, guys on the other side of the field breaking down in tears, like scary, devastating situation. I was just, just mind blown just at what had happened. Just a scary situation, something that, like we said, football is a violent game. You always know something like that can happen, but to see it happen on national TV in that moment, it's just devastating, especially because he got up and then just dropped right back down.
And that was a scary part. And again, I'm reading today when more stuff comes about, and like I said, you just thoughts and prayers, man. You pray for the kid because it's just tough. Your heart stops like that for, you start to think, all right, no oxygen to the brain. And it's just
young kid just starting his career. His mom is at the game. Like you're
horrible.
You're just, like you said, you're praying for him. You're praying for his teammates, his family, T Higgins, because Lord knows how he feels.
No doubt.
In that situation.
Yeah. And that, and man, that's what I'm saying. Even like the after the fact with people's thoughts and opinions, and now everyone is an expert. Everyone's a doctor. Everyone knows about CPR.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, man. It's just, there was no malicious intent. And T Higgins, his heart's probably devastated today. And as you mentioned, here's a young kid, 6th-round draft pick, making good, having his family and friends in the stadium, national spotlight, Monday Night Football. It came out about a half an hour ago that it was really the players that decided we're not going to play, not the NFL. They wanted the game to go on, the NFL. And that to me is a major, major problem, because here lies the rub. People are going to watch this and say, come on, Q, stop. It's a business. They drove them off. You can't ask players to go out there in a collision sport at 100 miles per hour after watching that up close and say, now give me your best for the next 40 something on minutes. And also going forward. Like I just, the NFL, it's warped, man. It's just absolutely warped. And you can't now go back. Not to cut you off. It's just my thought real quick, Jovan. You watch something like that, and after last night, I will never, ever again make a comment about how much a player gets paid. Ever again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't. And I think a lot of people are having, are going to have that discussion. Like, these guys need to get paid more. These guys need fully guaranteed contracts because they're putting their livelihood on the line, every single week, every snap they take, right? You could have, God forbid, you don't want to see those situations, but it's possible, right? Like every time we have those you have those situations, and it's it's scary. It's scary, like you said, we shouldn't, none of us, should criticize how much a player gets. If anything, we should encourage players to get more, right? We should encourage, the player association, like, hey, fight for your guys to get more, because
Yep.
you guys are, we see how much basketball players get, right? We see how much baseball players get. We're talking about, 300, $400 million contracts. There's no reason why NFL players can't be getting the same thing, at a fully guaranteed rate for what they put their bodies through on a weekly basis. Like you said, we're talking about collisions every single week. And that's not even including practicing.
Yep.
That's not including preseason, OTAs, even though they cut those things down. But it's a lot of wear and tear, on the body at this point of the season. So, in the NFL, like you said, I know the NFL tried to make it seem like they didn't, like, why would we want to have, a game restart? Like, who said that? Type of thought. But come on, like, where else would the stadium or the broadcasters get that information about?
You get it from the league
game
officials.
restarting and warming up, right?
You get it from the league officials. And like I said, even I made this case even during COVID, pay the frontline workers, the cops, the firemen, the teachers, take care of these people, right? Last night, the medical staff, the doctors, the EMT, I mean, they saved this kid's life. Let's not forget about that. They saved,
yes, they did.
and brought him back. They saved this kid's life. They're heroes. They need to be commended. And you know what they'd probably say? It's what we do every day, right? It
Right.
just goes.
This is our job.
Exactly. And that's extremely admirable and commendable. And I know, look, we don't know if or when they're going to resume this game. It's not going to be this week. Logistically, this is, and again, I'm not trying to, take it from what transpired, but we do talk about the games itself. And, logistically, this was a game last night for potential home field advantage. I mean, this, or at least seeding, I should say, because this was a big game. I mean, when you think about it, because was it Kansas City, Buffalo? No, Buffalo, because they beat Kansas City, and then Cincinnati, correct?
Yeah.
So seeding wise, and I'd have to double check, but I just don't know. Like, what do you do? How do you like remedy this? Like, what do you do with the rest of the game? How does this go down in the books?
I think for me, the best possible, solution is maybe give both teams a tie, because the tie doesn't count as a loss. Most of the times it counts as like that extra win, just because based on the circumstances, right? Like you said, you had someone on the field, fighting for their lives. Like, I don't know how even you can even resume, even say like, hey guys, like, let's all bring you guys back to play, have you two teams meet up again after, what transpired. So I think the best thing to do here is, but just, give these teams a tie. I think is the most respectable thing. I don't think you should give nobody a win or a loss, because there's no win in this situation.
Correct. But a fan of the Bills in Cincinnati is going to say, well, this could be the difference from a 2 seed or a 3 seed.
Yeah.
That's the reality, right?
Yeah,
that's the elephant in the room. We don't want to talk about it, right? Because now you're talking Buffalo would potentially play, it looks like the Chargers, and Cincinnati would play Jacksonville. If you flip it, that's the way I'm looking at it, right? Or
right.
Yeah, that's how it would pan out. 3 and 6. So Cincinnati, Baltimore. Yeah. So those fans respectively are saying, well, wait a second. But to your point, you can't squeeze another game, push the playoffs back. You can't play it tomorrow. You can't play it Thursday, and then send these guys back out there on Sunday.
Yeah, that's malpractice, right? To say, all right, you guys play, let's say Thursday, and then we'll somehow fit this game in, your last game in, a week later or so, like that. You can't do that. It's not enough time for recovery.
No,
for nobody. It doesn't serve nobody good. Even the teams that they would have to play, it served them, no good. So, like, best thing is a tie, and you just see how everything plays out.
So worst case scenario is occurring right now with the Philadelphia Eagles. 2 losses, gave up a lot of points against Dallas, even though they scored. Offensively, did nothing against New Orleans in a bad loss.
Mm-hmm.
And the irony now is the Giants get to rest their starters potentially, and the Eagles have to play the game.
Play their starters.
Right? And it's funny because when the line came out and opened at 13, I think it was, I'm like, all right, Vegas is assuming that Dayball is going to rest, but the Eagles have to go out and play a game because they've lost the ability over the past 2 weeks to clinch home field advantage, and now they have to beat the Giants on Sunday.
Yeah, the Eagles can only blame themselves in this situation. They put themselves in this spot, and last week's game against the Saints was a winnable game for them. It was winnable, but there was massive coaching failures on offense and defense. Offensively, they did not go to the run. The fact that only Miles Sanders had 2 carries in the first half is a disgrace against a Saints defense that has struggled against the run. But this is the same situation that happened a couple weeks ago against the Chicago Bears, where they didn't run the ball against a run defense and decided they wanted to pass. And it's a situation where I think the Eagles coaching staff sometimes tries to outsmart themselves and tries to do the opposite instead of doing what works. And we know this team is most effective on offense when that running game's rolling. And they didn't do that, especially when you think about the offensive line was struggling. They were getting beat on the point of attack multiple times. Minshew didn't have time in the pocket. And even when he did, he wasn't making, clean throws. And I mean, people will say he threw a touchdown, but that was more so A.J. Brown and the DB, not making a good play on the ball than Minshew making a good pass. And then defensively, again, getting beat at point of attack. They only my issue with the Eagles defense is they don't blitz. They don't bring more than 4. It's always you're leaning on those 4 guys, which is cool, right? Because those guys all have 10 sacks across the board. So you're getting pressure. But sometimes you need to bring 4 because you can't leave your corners sitting on islands and zones because they will get picked apart. Andy Dalton picked them apart early, and they were getting punched in the mouth with Taysom Hill. And they eventually fixed it in the second half, but it was just a little bit too late. So they can only blame themselves to be in the spot where, like you said, is now they have to play their starters and they have to play well, because if not, there's still a couple of teams sitting there that could take that number 1 seed. And now you're going to be forced to play the following week instead of having that extra bye week.
That's right. And that's the 49ers all of a sudden winners of 9 straight. And, you don't want to have to go to a road, West Coast, make that trip. But that's the magnitude of getting a bye and resting players. And more importantly, having a divisional playoff game at home. Maybe the weather's shitty, and all of a sudden you win that, you're hosting the NFC Championship. Like, was this arrogance over cockiness? Was it just, believing in the press clipping, so to speak, as my father used to say, a little too soon? I mean, or just ultimately, you look at so many injuries, Hurts, Johnson, now Sweat, which is a monster loss, the play calling, the scheme defensively, not giving Sanders the ball offensively. Seems like it's a culmination of everything, and it's happened at the worst time.
Yeah, no, it definitely is a culmination. Like you said, injuries, I think, play a huge part in it. You hope that they can get C.J. Gardner-Johnson back soon. That would be a huge upgrade to that secondary. Even though Reed Blankenship has done very well, you still like to have, him back there. But definitely injuries play a role. Play calling call the role, because the play calling hasn't been great on both sides as of late. And you can honestly, and for people that try to make it seem, like the Chris Sims of the world, that you can just plug any quarterback into this system and the team just goes and it'll just keep flourishing. Don't even look at the Cowboys game. Look at how they played against that Saints team. Jalen Hurts makes a difference in that game. I think you have Jalen Hurts in that game. I think the Eagles win that game.
Oh, hands down. But now the question is, what's the expectation on Sunday with Hurts? Because here's the other thing. Even if the Giants decide to rest, and let's be honest, it's going to be Jones. It's going to be Saquon. McKinney's probably going to play a little bit. Jackson will rest another week, or maybe you give him reps if he's good. Maybe Thibodeau. Williams is banged up. You got to worry about their wide receivers because they're thin, and you don't want one of those guys to go out. That would be devastating. Maybe you listen, Kenny Galladay's making a $17 million. Here you go. Get your 36 snaps and catch 1 ball.
Yep.
Fine. But defensively, Wink loves to blitz. You know that. So now all of a sudden, you got a shaky offensive line for the Eagles. You got a very blitz-happy Giant. They blitz like at a 79% clip. You get them in third and long, they pin the ears back. Now the risk to reward factor, you're going to keep Hurts out there. That's why I believe this might be a case where, man, if he's out there, and let's just say halftime, it's a 13-6 game, and the Eagles are winning 16-6, whatever. And he's been sacked 3-4 times and taken some hits. You know, the offense of the Giants, they're not going to muster a ton of points. They're not. I mean, last weekend against the Colts, and thank you, Dr. Alford. Last week against
No problem.
the Colts, it was you can, just charge me for this appointment. It was an aberration. Okay, fine. But there's no threat really the Giants are going to put up another 27 or 30 something odd points. I can see Sirianni saying, that's it, come out. Because what happens if this kid gets banged up again?
And that's the bigger question, right? And I think if you in that spot where you're up, 2 touchdowns at the most, you have to pull them, because like you said, you got to think of the bigger picture, which is we get him out. All right, he got his game reps in after not playing for the past couple of weeks. He's got his game reps in. We can rest him for the bye week. If you get it, you got him into divisional playoffs a little bit more healthy. And this, again, is a spot where you lean on your running game. The Giants' run defense hasn't been at its best this season. And we're now talking about the Giants. Like you said, they're not going to have their big standout, defensive pieces, ready to go, or, potentially playing a lot of snaps. Run the ball. You have 3 capable running backs: Miles Sanders, Boston Scott, Kenny Gainwell, all capable guys that you can carry the ball with to kind of manage the clock and kind of get this game going. Because let's just be real, neither team in this spot, because both know they're going to the playoffs, nobody wants to get hurt in this game. They just want to get in, get out. Eagles obviously want to win. Giants, they don't need to win. Giants is just thinking, let's get nobody hurt. That's important. And let's just roll out of here to get ready for the, the playoffs. So if I'm the Eagles, if you're up, get them out, lean on that run game and just run with it that way.
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine if the Giants somehow won this game?
Let me tell you, it will not be pretty. Let me tell you, it will not be pretty, because people were already upset at how last week's game against the Saints played out. And if you add in a loss this week, and now a team that was supposed to be the NFC favorite, to go to the Super Bowl, now have to play a wild card, divisional potentially, and then an NFC championship game just to get to the Super Bowl, even though your chances were much more easier if you just have the 2 games then the Super Bowl, it would be a massive collapse.
And that's what I wanted to ask you as we start to close it out. When you look at this, is it a massive choke job and collapse, because it was all there for them? And this is what's going to happen. Well, you can't account for injuries. Well, guess what? You lost Carson Wentz, and your backup still took you to the Super Bowl and you won it. So
yeah. I mean,
I think it's a choke job, man, to be honest with you. A massive one.
It would be fair. It would be fair to say that, because you start off 9, 10-0, 11-0, whatever it was. And you haven't, and like a lot of people pointed out, you haven't really played that well in the second half of the season. There's been that Colts game, you didn't really play well, but you were able to escape because of your quarterback, pulling you through. You didn't play well against the Commanders. Defensively, you beat the Packers, but defensively you gave up a ton of points. You gave up a ton of points to the Cowboys. So yeah, it would be a massive collapse, because like you said, everything was laid out to you on a silver platter of just win what you have to do at the end of the season, take the number 1 seed, play 2 games to get to a championship, to Super Bowl at home. And now you lose it. And like you said, no team, as we know, it's hard to win, on the road, to get to the Super Bowl. I mean, obviously the Bengals kind of defied that logic last season. They had the 1 home game against the Raiders, but then they had to go on the road to Tennessee. But Tennessee was like more of a fraud number 1 seed than a real number 1 seed. And then they had to beat KC at Arrowhead, but you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. You want to be at home and make those teams come to you.
Giants went on the road in 2007, Tampa, Dallas, and then in Green Bay. And then in 2011, they had the wild card game against Atlanta, and then they had to go to Green Bay and had to go to San Francisco. And Green Bay was 15-1 that year. So, Steelers have done it. It's just it's tough to go on the road and win in the playoffs. It really is. Home field, to me, when we start to distinguish advantage in sports, it's 1 game. It's not like a series in the NBA, or in the NHL, right? We always talk about that.
It's like March Madness. When are you go home?
That's it, man. All right. lastly, light night in the association. You got 3 games: Wizards, Bucks, Celtics, Thunder, Kings, Jazz. I probably should have taken some player props last night. It seemed like everyone and their mother was scoring over 40 last night.
I know Clay went off for what 54.
Mitchell,
Embiid had
71.
42.
Yeah.
I know the 71 for Mitchell, just
Jesus God.
incredible.
I did a double take when I saw that.
After last week, Luca had the 60-point triple double last Monday.
No defense. So you're saying no defense in the NBA. Start playing these overs. Do you like any of the 3 tonight, these games?
If I had to pick something, I would probably look at. I know it's a high total at 243, but I probably look at that Kings Jazz over, just because the Kings have been shaky over the last 4 or 5 games, and they've given up at least over 120 in these losses. So their defense has been struggling. And this Jazz team, I think they just played a couple nights ago, and the final score was 126 to 125. So these teams want to play at a high pace, and they got the guys that will get it up there. I mean, Utah, they got Marketing who will put it up there, Clarkson will put it up there, and De'Aaron will push the pace, and Sabonis will get his. So at 243, I know it's a very high number, but with these 2 teams and with the way the Kings are playing defense, I mean, why not?
All right, there you have it. He always makes the picks red hot of late. I don't know what you did last night with the player props. Who knows? He is Jovan Alford, at Jovan 10 content producer at The Sporting News. Give him a follow on Twitter. Does a great job covering sports, Total Sports Live as well. So really good stuff, good articles, good insight, good gambling stuff, handicap features and everything. So definitely give him a follow. Jovan, always appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate it. Thanks again.
All right, you got it. There you have it, folks. So our guy, Jovan Alford, jumping on board for a couple moments. Just a reminder, later on in the week, we're going to have a boatload of guests from our good friends over at TriX57 and, of course, Play It Again Sports. Keep it locked in to the YouTube channel at Rich Q&Q. Like, comment, subscribe. Appreciate everyone tuning into this edition of Back Your Play.